How did the marketing department for the speakers I blew up yesterday get away with labeling a system that could barely produce 5 watts of clean audio as a system that could produce 650 watts peak momentary power output, or P.M.P.O? That is how. Quick definition of terms before getting the rant underway. First up is RMS, or root mean square, and that is the alternating current equivalent of a direct current, which produces the same power dissipation in a resistive load, calculated by the peak value of an alternating current sine wave divided by the square root of 2. Next up, we have PR, which will be defined as the real audio power an amplifier is capable of producing into a load, hence calculated by the root mean square voltage multiplied by the root mean square amperage. PA will be defined as the advertised audio power, or the fancy, impressive-looking number put on the packaging to attract customers. The most boring way and simple way of calculating this is simply the real power multiplied by a constant K, which can simply be made up on the spot to produce an impressive-looking result. Finally, the subject of the rant, P.M.P.O, peak music power output, though in this definition, music can be easily replaced with momentary with absolutely no change, because this is just a fancy term for advertising power, and it has no basis on science, though some BS science can also be made up on the spot to somewhat justify the numbers produced. To calculate PA or PMPO, there is a very easy way, as I mentioned earlier. Simply the actual power the amplifier can cleanly produce, multiplied by a constant K, which is made up on the spot, and thus you get the peak music power output. In the case of the junk speakers I blew up in the previous video, we have their actual estimated power at 5 watts. Then that is multiplied by 130 to get, what do you know, 650 watts. Done. However, there is another way. DC power supplies formed by rectifying an AC voltage are usually filtered at their output by a capacitor, or in some cases a combination of capacitors and inductors. This output capacitance, as demonstrated in the previous video, or clip, is capable of supplying very short bursts of current. In that case, it was 200 volts into 5 ohms, or 40 amps theoretical instantaneous current. However, all power supplies also have a finite current capacity. In this case, an extreme example, the 60-watt light bulb in the lamp on the left-hand side of the screen severely limits the current that is available to this power supply, which means, though it can produce 200 volts as seen here, once I short it into the same 5 ohm load, like that, the light bulb soaks up all of the voltage. The current is limited such that it can barely produce 2 volts into 5 ohms. If I separate it again, the voltage once again climbs up to 200 volts. The peak voltage the unit's power supply can produce, and multiply it by the peak current the power supply can dump into a dead short, thus calculating the peak power, the advertising power, or peak momentary power output. In the case of the shit speakers I blew up, that would be about 14.5 volts for the little power supply when it was unloaded, and it could maybe dump 45 amps into a dead short, resulting in, like magic, 652 watts, which can conveniently be rounded down to 650 watts to be advertised. However, these ratings get even stupider when you apply them to a much larger amplifier, such as the Kenwood that blew the shit speakers out of the water. That runs at an idle voltage of 48.5, and it could probably supply 200 amps or more into a dead short for a couple microseconds. Calculating that out, the Kenwood has a PMPO of 9.7 kilowatts. This is bullshit! To recap, if you're shopping online for speaker systems, and you only see P.M.P.O values with no mention of RMS or root mean square, go someplace else, you are being misinformed. Also, you get exactly what you pay for. I paid $9 knowing I was getting a crappy speaker system, and look what showed up. You're out shopping, and you see a subcompact system claiming more power than the PA in most large clubs. Well, you're getting ripped off, because such technology does not exist. So, go forth into the world with your new knowledge on how to shop for speakers without getting ripped off. Thanks for watching.